marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Andrews, and Ashley Jenkins is here as well. And we are going to be presenting Raising Kids of Character today. This presentation is basically an overview of just talking about responsible children, ways that we can parent children into making responsible choices and having responsible behavior. And we're also going to be talking about chores at the end. Ashley, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Absolutely. So the first thing we're going to talk about what character is in general. Our character is who we really are. So John Wooden, the coach, says reputation is what you are perceived to be, but your character is what you actually are. So when we think about our children and who we want them to become, I want you to list 3 traits that you are hopeful that your children develop. So that might be being responsible, having good self-control, being tolerant or respectful, being a good citizen. All of those things are part of character. So take a few minutes and write down 3 traits that you're hoping that your children develop. I want you to reflect on the fact that those traits are often going to be the things that you model for them. So as we go through this slideshow, I want you to just kind of reflect on those character traits and kind of think about what we're studying and how you can incorporate those into developing your child's character. So how do parents affect character? These are the things I'm going to talk about today. Parenting styles. We've all come from different families and different parenting styles, and we get to decide what kind of parents we want to be. So even if that's different than the family life that you came from, or if it's similar, it's important for us to realize what tendencies we have in our parenting styles, and then what our goals are in either changing those or maintaining the parenting style that we think is healthy. The second thing is helping to develop our child's sense of responsibility. That is definitely a big part of developing character. And it's hard when they're younger. It's hard to teach them that. But by developing that, they will definitely strengthen who they are, strengthen their character as they get older. And the last thing is that the child learns to respect authority. And part of that is obeying you as a parent. So as we talk about the 3 parenting types, the first one is authoritarian parenting. So when we're talking about that, the goal in authoritarian parenting is the parent wants to exercise power. So that's often harsh discipline. The parent is always right. They're not going to listen to the child talk about their side of things. They just want to exercise their own right to the power and the relationship. So the issue with that is that they're often absent of empathy. They're based on fear, and they actually encourage bullying. And children often, when they're brought up in this parenting style, the child may be good, but that's only to avoid punishment. So it's not that they actually want to do the right thing. It's that they don't want to get in trouble, which obviously as they get older, that will change because as most of us with teenagers or who've been teenagers, we know that if their heart is not in it to do the right thing, they're going to weasel their way around things to get out of trouble. So that's actually not the most effective parenting style. On the other end of the spectrum, we have permissive parenting. So that is basically when the parent doesn't want to kind of hassle with disciplining their children. So whatever the child wants, the child gets, which is often at somebody else's expense. So there's no healthy limitations that are set. The parents tend to be wishy-washy on important things that should not be compromised. That often doesn't prepare the child for the real world, because in the real world, relationships don't always go your way, jobs don't always go your way. You're going to be disappointed and you're not going to get your way. And so that is something that we keep in mind. It might be easier for us just to give in to the child, but it is not in the long run going to be the healthiest parenting style. The fine balance is authoritative parenting. So when we look at authoritative parenting, it's the balance between those two other things. We're going to look at the empathy from permissive parenting. We're going to be empathetic, but we're also going to set limits. Okay, those are called loving limits. So both of those kind of in the middle of the other two. The example that we've given is the reason you allow your children the freedom to play in the backyard, the backs onto the road, is because the backyard is fenced off. You're not going to let your child run out into traffic, but you will let them play in the backyard with the limit being the fence. Both of those things are important for them to have enough freedom that they can explore, who they are and what they want to do in life, but within the boundaries of safety. So here's a video on how to raise responsible kids. It's a few minutes, but she kind of touches on some of the parenting styles we've been addressing and also just how to raise responsible kids in general. Emily, do we need to play this or they would play it?
Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Markham of AhaParenting.com, and today we're talking about how you can help your child become more responsible. Now, the first thing you can do is give your child choices right from the time your child even understands what you're talking about. Do you want the blue cup? Do you want the red cup? Why does this matter? Well, judgment develops from experience, and sometimes good judgment develops from bad experiences. So kids really need the chance to make decisions right from the beginning, and that way the decisions they make when they're out of your sight, when they're 17, 18, and 19, are going to be much better decisions than a child whom you've made all the choices. The second thing you can do is problem solve rather than blame or punish your child. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, just take the word punish out of your vocabulary entirely. Instead, think in terms of problem solving. So your child has done something wrong? You're looking for a punishment? Instead, say, well, we have a problem here. Not even your child is being a problem because your child isn't. Your child now has created a problem. So we look at the problem and we help our child figure out, what could we do about this problem? You broke your sister's toy, right? Or worse yet, you hit your sister and you damage that relationship. What can we do to problem solve there? Is there a repair that you can make, a reparation? And that's how children learn how that even though we're human and sometimes we make mistakes, we can always make things better. And it empowers them instead of making them feel like bad people. The third thing is setting limits in an empathic way. I want to tell you about a piece of research that has been going on, the studies about this for the last 50 years. And we have some very clear indicators of what helps kids come out great, be responsible, but also be emotionally intelligent and just all around wonderful people. So look at this. We tend to think that parenting, kids are always up when we interact with our children. We're always on a scale between permissive and authoritarian, right? We're somewhere on this scale of demandingness. If we demand a lot, we're over here on the authoritarian side of the scale. If we don't demand very much, we're over here on the permissive side. These are the kids that run around the restaurant and annoy everybody. These are the kids who everyone says are spoiled rotten. These kids are the kids who really, when you ask them later, they'll say their parents were very strict, but often they aren't speaking to their parents. If the parents are very strict, the kids have rebelled a lot during the high school years. And so we might think, okay, the sweet spot's right in between. But here's the disadvantage to that. The disadvantage is I want my kids to get straight A's. That's over here, right? I want my kids to write nice thank you letters. That's over here. I want my kids to sit down in the restaurant instead of running around annoying people. That's over here too. So what am I supposed to do if I'm too demanding? My kids are going to be mad at me, right? And in fact, there's a lot of research that demanding parents don't raise kids who think for themselves, and they're actually very they are very vulnerable to peer pressure as they grow up. But there is a solution. You know why? We've only got half the picture here. Here's what we need to look at. There's another axis. This axis is the support axis. So if you look at high demandingness over here, but high support over here, suddenly we get the sweet spot. That's the kind of parent we want to be. We want to be as demanding as the authoritarian parent in the sense of, no, you can't run around the restaurant, sweetie, but we want to be as supportive. I see it's not really appropriate to have brought you to this restaurant. You're only 3 years old and it's the end of a long day, right? We're seeing it from our child's point of view and we're supporting her. Or, honey, you can be as jealous and mad at your sister as you want, but you cannot break her toy, right? We need to do something about this problem you've created. That's the sweet spot in parenting, empathic limits. Thank you.
All right. So one way that we can kind of do that is look at what we've talked about in education for a while, but I don't feel like we always pass it on to parents. And that is looking at fixed mindset versus growth mindset. So fixed mindset says basic qualities are simply fixed traits. So being smart or being talented or being sweet or kind, all of those things in a fixed mindset, you either are or you are not. So if your child makes good grades, you say, oh, you are so smart. Or if they score a soccer goal, you say, man, you are athletic. Growth mindset focuses on the fact that basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. So instead of saying, you're so smart, you can say, I love how you never gave up on that tough math problem you're working on. Or I love how you've been practicing so hard at your soccer skills. That teaches that child that they have room to grow into achievement instead of just either being one or the other. If you tell your child, you are so smart all the time, and they make a C on a paper, they're going to be confused because they've been told that they are smart and yet they've struggled to make a good grade. If you say, I love how you never gave up, it's teaching them that when they don't give up and they're working hard, then they can still achieve what they've set out to do. Growth mindset, children learn more, they learn it more quickly, and they view challenges and even failures as opportunities to improve their learning and their skills. So that's what we want to focus on as parents, is that growth mindset. All right, life requires work, not just play. We know that, and we want to teach our children that as well. So this is where we're going to focus on obedience versus responsibility. So obedience is when your child does what they are asked. They're not questioning your authority. When you ask them to do something, they say, okay, and they do it. Responsibility is when a child accepts ownership. That's for a task or a chore. They see that it needs to be done, and that's why they do it. If there are dishes out on the counter and they see that you're busy, then they go ahead and they start putting away the dishes because they understand that that will help you. Or if they leave their belongings all around the house and it's a mess, they don't need you to ask them. They understand that those are their things and they need to put them up in their room. So that would be responsibility. Here are some more examples. Obedience, informing your child that she is to complete her homework before she watches a show. So when you tell her that, she's not arguing or talking back, but she does what you ask her to do. Another example, after playing outside, you inform your son it's time to come inside and get ready for bed. Your son asks for more time outside. You tell him it's too late, but remind him that you can play outside again tomorrow night. He gathers up his toys and does not argue. They may not always like it. They might not agree with you, but obedience requires that the child is listening and comes under your authority and obeys. So responsibility is either taking on a task that you are expected to do or a way that you're expected to act. So again, if your parents expect you to bring your backpack in with school so that you'll have everything you need, then the child knows that that's their responsibility. Or a parent expecting that if the child plays at the park, they're going to play responsibly and not in a way that puts their body in harm or puts somebody else in harm. When they are willing to take on that responsibility, then they are allowed the freedom to do it. I know my daughter, 2 days in a row, we packed her lunch and she left her lunch in the car. And then she left it at home a different day. I did not drive. The first time I went out to my car and I got it and I brought it into her and I said, it's your responsibility. If you want to bring your lunch in each day to school, then you are responsible for the lunch. So she got it. She said, okay. Well, she did it again and she left it at home. I did not go back that day and get her lunch because I wanted her to feel the weight of that responsibility. If she wanted me to help make her lunch, then she needed to be responsible enough to bring it to school. And I think that it worked. So how involved should you be in teaching responsibility? This is tricky, and this is kind of where our parenting styles come into play, kind of where we come from and where we hope to be. So kind of reflect on that as we look in these. The first one is give up some control, which sounds kind of crazy maybe, but allowing your child to do the task his or her own way encourages pride and accomplishment in their child. If you have a really young kid, this is tough. If they're supposed to clear off the table and they're carrying their cereal bowl up and there's like milk splashing sometimes, or sometimes we're just going to have to deal with that, because for them to understand it's their responsibility to take up their plate and their dishes, they're excited most of the time to feel like a big kid and to get to do that. But sometimes that's more of a hassle for us. They might not clean up their room exactly the way we would clean it up, but they are trying to put up their toys and they're trying, and we should praise them for the ways that they are learning how to be responsible. Number 2, not wanting our children to fail can lead parents to do too much for their children. We've all seen that. And we've also seen what happens when parents do that, because the children are going to grow up expecting someone else to pick up where they left off. And we don't want that for our kids. We want them to be responsible for their own actions. Number 3, there are times that children need guidance and support so they can learn to be responsible. As Emily talks about the age requirements for chores, this one really comes to light. This is very flexible in that we're going to look at how old the children are and what their responsibilities are. We don't want to give a little bitty child way too much responsibility because they'll feel defeated by that. Basically, find the balance. Decide when it is appropriate to step in and help your child. The one thing that's really tied into responsibility is self-esteem. We want our children to have high self-esteem because they're better at waiting for what they want. They can acknowledge their mistakes and learn from them. They stick to a task and are willing to ask for help when they need it. They're clear about their strengths and their weaknesses. They're also willing to try new things. They're not afraid to fail and believing they can solve problems they encounter. That's part of kind of when you don't solve the problem for them, then they learn that they are equipped and able to solve problems. So they're more willing to face them. One thing we want to make sure no matter what, as we build their self-esteem, is that your child feels loved and capable. So nothing that they do or any way that they fail changes the fact that you love them. You might not be happy with their behavior. You might be really frustrated with them, but you love them still, and you still find them capable to achieve what they've set off to do. So these are some things that we just encourage you to look over and make sure that you're saying these things to your kids and emphasizing that no kid can hear "I love you" or "I love spending time with you" enough. That's really important, that you find ways to praise your children for who they are. All those things are really important. The opposite of teaching or not teaching responsibility would be kids who frequently expect things to be done for them and are demanding. They don't show gratitude or appreciation when somebody does do something for them. They may have a lot of things. They may have had a lot of toys, a lot of stuff in their room, but that is not fulfilling. So they're going to feel like they never have enough. They have a hard time waiting for something that they want. They might be used to just getting whatever they want whenever they want it. They won't admit to mistakes. They're going to blame it on somebody else and not take ownership. They don't try their best, and they may not think about giving back to other people. Either that might be at home or in the community. So the ways that we can avoid that are avoid giving too much. The example is a 5-year-old gets a Wii and gets gets each new game that's released. He doesn't have to wait for it. Mom or dad's always giving that to them as soon as possible, and he's not even taking care of it. He's not careful with it. He's not putting it away. Doing too much. Again, this goes with age. Mom always hangs up her 5-year-old's coat on the coat hook. A 5-year-old may not be able to put away dishes or something like that, but they can certainly put up their coat. So if they're capable of doing the chore around the house, then they need to be the one responsible for doing that. The other ways we need to be careful are not expecting enough. So, for example, if a dad cleans up his 3-year-old's toys after she is finished playing, then he's doing that for her. She's not learning anything. It may seem easier for dad just to pick them up and get them out of the way, but dad needs to teach her that what she gets out, she puts up to encourage that responsibility piece. Again, we're going to kind of look at what kind of parents we are. We talked some about parenting styles, and these are roles kind of within those styles. The first one is a nurturing or caring role. So sometimes you're going to need to listen and support and just spend time with your child. This is how you communicate unconditional love, that you enjoy just being in their presence. You're there for them. If they trip and fall and they scrape their knee, then you need to give them a big hug and wrap them up and listen. Reading, playing games, encouraging them. This is a very, very important role that you play in their lives. Another important role is the structure and executive role. And this role is kind of where you set the limits and the boundaries, which is also part of loving them. This is the house rules, routines, responsibilities that you give them. Both of these need to be combined. At some point, you're going to just be in the nurturing role. When your son falls down and is crying, you don't need to instruct him on how to walk down the sidewalk better. You don't need to, lecture him. You're going to be full mode, nurturing, caring role to love on him. When he gets out all his toys and they're all over your house and it's a mess, you're not going to coddle him and give him hugs and say, gosh, I really wish you would just clean up. I love you. At that point, you're going to say, we're a family and it's important that we work together to keep this house clean. So your responsibility right now is to pick up these Legos that you got out. You're just going to be the executive role. But as a parent, we're going to do both. By carrying out that executive role, you can avoid the pitfalls of overindulgence that we were talking about. So setting limits, saying no, holding your children accountable, and enforcing rules, setting expectations, which is super important so that your child knows what the rules and expectations are in your house, assigning chores, following through and making sure that they get done, and then also following through with consequences if they don't. So if you've established rules in your house and the child does not follow through and follow what you've set to do, then there will be consequences for that. And that's teaching them accountability that goes right along with responsibility. So how can you help? What does this look like at home? Sometimes you're going to be coach. So if you have a child that's younger, then they might need help, you encouraging them. This talks about, explains that, let's go back. A child who is supposed to clean up her bedroom each week needs constant help to avoid being distracted. She also complains about having to do this task since her 2-year-old sister does not have to clean up. Okay, so you can be a coach. You can just give them reminders, supervision, make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. Another part is a teacher. So if they don't know how to do the task yet, you're going to need to teach them how to do that. Laundry is a great example of this. A child has volunteered to do laundry, but needs her mother or father to tell her how to do it. It's great if your kid is motivated to do a certain task, and it's wonderful when you have the opportunity to show them. You can't expect them to do it if they've never been taught. Also, being a delegator when the child has reached maturity and can do tasks independently, all by themselves. So a teenager doesn't need reminders all the time to keep his room clean. He doesn't need you to come in there and teach him how to pick up the toys and teach him how to, I guess it wouldn't be toys, whatever the video games. He doesn't need you to help to show him how to do that. He knows, and you just need him to keep him accountable. So what do we do when children will not complete the tasks? Go ahead and think about which role your child needs to be that moment. Do you need to be a teacher or a coach or a delegator in that time? One really, really good tip is to break down the large tasks into small ones. I know that my 4-year-old's room can look like a tornado came through. And if I just tell him, hey, buddy, go clean up your entire room, that feels really overwhelming. And we can relate to that. You know, if our house is a big mess and we have to tackle the whole thing, that can be overwhelming. So we focus on one small part. So if the room's a mess, but there are books all thrown across the floor, then say, hey, I need you to go pick up these books and put them into your bookcase. That's one little part. We say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's the saying in our house. So instead of getting overwhelmed, they're going to feel equipped, like they're able to do one small part at a time. Allow your child to have a say in it. And when he does it, use praise and encouragement. Use rules to express your expectation, and use consequences for non-compliance. And the huge part of that is following through with them. You give them a consequence, follow through with it, so they trust that you're in charge and that you will do what you say you're going to do. So if we look at our whole home environment, how can we promote responsibility in our home in general? A big part of that is modeling the behavior that you want to see. That's what we talked about in the beginning. When we were talking about character traits, the biggest indicator that those children are going to follow through and develop those traits are if they are watching you do it. So if you want to promote responsibility in your home, then you need to be doing that so they see what you're doing and will copy after you. Share your own experiences. As long as that's age appropriate, there's nothing wrong with that. Create routines, teach and show organization and how to manage time, and use conversation starters so that you can start connecting to your children. The car is a really good time to do that. You're not staring at their little eyeballs. They don't feel intimidated. You can just ride along and, think of some good topics for you guys to talk about, and make sure that you're listening to them. Phones are a huge distraction, and they're also very helpful. So use your phones when they're helpful. And when you're around your kids, set them down and look at your children and make sure they know that you are listening. That really communicates to the child that they are worth listening to. Okay, is this you, Emily?
When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown a mind. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me.